Thank you very much. Welcome to Senate District 22. I don't know if you knew that you were in it, but you are on my home turf. Waco's my largest city. I should say complete city. I do have a piece of Grand Prairie and a piece of Arlington up in Tarrant County, but as a whole city, McLennan County and Waco are my largest single populated county within the district. So welcome. It's great to be in the heart of Texas. Mona asked me to, she gave me 30 minutes, and as with all things that you've heard me, those of you that are familiar with when I've spoken, there are 3 rules of engagement: be good, be brief, be gone. Because how often, in fact, I had a graduation here in the convention center last week, and it's a high school graduation, and there's always 2 trains you have to worry about at a graduation. And that is the train of thought of the guest speaker having a caboose, and the mommy and daddy gravy train, the caboose going through the guardrails called graduation. And so, but I do want to also apply the 1/3, 2/3 rule that we always applied in the Army. At whatever headquarters you're at, whatever amount of time you have, you only take 1/3 of that time to put the operation order together and get it distributed to subordinate units so that they have 2/3 of the remaining time. So given Mona asked me to speak for 30 minutes, I told her, and she wanted me to do Q&A, I thought it'd be best to just take 8-10 minutes, just go over some of the big muscle movements, and then 20 minutes so that y'all can ask questions. I think that's far more informative. Don't want to just have me come in and vomit on you for 30 minutes. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that, but just kind of blah on you for 30 minutes, and then I've got to run up to Hillsborough because I've got another event up there that our SREC committee woman, Janet Jackson, has put together, that I'll be up there for that. So I don't have a ton of time to tarry, but I want to make sure that it's a good interaction with y'all, if that's agreeable rules of engagement. North-South head nod. Okay, good. Okay, good. Let me cover just some of the really big muscle movements that we did with the just concluded 84th legislative session. One thing that we must always do is pass a budget, and we remained under our budget cap. Those of you that are familiar with the state of Texas having a budget cap of what can be spent, trying to tighten it up a little bit, couldn't quite get that done. But the dollar amounts that we're spending remain under the growth that is capped by the Constitution. I will not try to explain to you the mathematical mechanisms, but bottom line is that the budget that came out of the Senate was about $211 billion. When we went to conference under Senator Nelson's leadership, something that I don't think has ever happened. Usually when you come out of conference, budgets are a little bit larger than either body's budget when you come out of conference. And in fact, what happened is we actually came in about $2.5 billion below what the Senate had passed. So it gave us some room so that should we come back into next legislative session, and generally we always have to do some sort of supplemental associated with Medicaid and the costs associated with that, but making sure that we've got dollars to handle those costs if our estimates are wrong. That's the challenge with a 2-year budget. You've got to estimate 2 years out, and a lot can happen in that time frame. But that'll still give us room to provide any additional supplemental appropriations in the 2017 session for anything that was unforeseen with what we budgeted this go around, and still stay under the budget cap. So Senator Nelson is to be overwhelmingly lauded for her leadership, certainly on the Senate side, and working with Representative Otto on the House side. There were some things we did within the budget. There was some tax relief. We got rid of about 25% of the franchise tax, HB 32. We're beginning in echelon the ability to get rid of the margins tax, one of the most onerous taxes because it's based on gross revenue, not profit. And given the growth in the Texas budget, we weren't able to completely get rid of in one fell swoop because that would have put us in a cap issue. But we're starting to chop away at that thing where we think the 25% cut across the board for Texas businesses will eliminate somewhere between 40 and 50% of the businesses that currently pay it will no longer pay it because of those reductions. So that's very good news, and of course the next echelon objective is getting rid of it for the other businesses that would still be paying it in the coming interim. We also provided some additional homestead exemption tax relief, went from $15,000 to $25,000. We had some other things that we tried to do with that couldn't quite get done, associated with tethering it to market averages of average median home cost. But the bottom line is that we're going to raise that exemption to $25,000, and the governor has already signed that. Transportation, we've done some things, as you know, that with the growth in our state, as rapid as it has been growing, and not only does the electoral map tell you that, the number of seats we gained in redistricting in 2011, but the number of people coming in are placing a great demand on roads, water, number of things. So we've taken the vehicle sales tax and dedicated it to highways. The downfall to dedication is that TxDOT doesn't have to come in and justify receiving it. That's the downside to dedicating dollars to their budget. When they have to come in and talk to you, they listen to your priorities. If they don't have to come in and talk to you, you run that risk, but we're making sure that, working with the Transportation Commissioners, they're listening very closely to the legislature. Of course, Second Amendment related things, I have the honor to report to you that I believe today Governor Abbott is signing open carry. Yesterday he signed campus carry, and so we've made some significant advances in the Article 1, Section 23 portion of the state constitution, and of course Second Amendment related items in the federal constitution. There were some other things that we did as well. I think we're going to need to do some additional stronger things, but we did get the pastor's protection. You're seeing some of the things that are happening with religious liberties in Indiana, Ohio, New York, that particularly after what happened in Houston during the interim with Mayor Parker and wanting pastors' sermons and the like. I will tell you, it saddens me that the state had to act in this way, because the U.S. Constitution and the state constitution, I think, are pretty plain, but we added some additional protections to ensure that we don't get certainly any state court decisions that would cause us to find ourselves having to very closely look at judicial conduct in the state of Texas for state judges. But we protect the pastor's right to decline same-sex marriages and affirms the preservation and definition of marriage in the Texas Constitution between one man and one woman. Border security is what I spent a great deal of time with Representative Bonin. The National Guard of Texas still has a presence on the border. It is not as large as it was back in June, July of last year, because the flow rate has been much lower than what it was coming out of the state convention last go-round. The challenge that we face with border security is that we do not have an unlimited budget in Texas, and we cannot deficit spend. So what we were doing prior to the surge occurring last June was base law enforcement functions and supplementing the Border Patrol where we had the resources to do that. We cannot spend so much money that it would put Texas on a fiscally unsustainable path to so secure the border as if it were a Maginot Line in France right after World War I, that we spent an inordinate amount of money that cannot be sustained, knowing that if we did that, we have 2/3 of the border, but we'd have to have New Mexico, Arizona, and California, or the federal government reestablishing control of it. So if you create a barrier that causes those that would come here illegally to simply go around it the way the Germans went around the Maginot Line in World War II, we've spent an inordinate amount of money to do that. So the balance was an additional law enforcement presence that can relieve the National Guard. I would use the term relief in place as a military professional, that as the DPS trains additional officers and brings them into service, it really is a law enforcement action. The Guard has been a eyes and ears helping report to our law enforcement, but they are not there in a military capacity. They are military personnel in a support to law enforcement capacity. But law enforcement will now provide the primary eyes and ears along the border, and it also means that those officers that we've had to take from Amarillo, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texarkana, other parts of the state will stay home in their respective DPS regions instead of going down temporary duty and weakening the interior of the state. We're going to strengthen the border area, and in doing so, it also allows us to stay at full strength in the other parts of the state. There's a number of other things that we do there. I have taken that 8 to 10 minutes to give you just some of the big muscle movements. I could give some others that I personally worked on that weren't necessarily key priorities of either the governor or lieutenant governor. But I would be more than happy to address your questions. I know there was discussion on Convention of the States. Yes, sir.
Senator, the governor could have given the Guard the arrest powers, but they did not do that, and that's why you say they just observed and report.
No, the governor can't. The governor can't do that. Only the president can give that authority. The governor can call out the National Guard for a state purpose and pay for it with state dollars, but he cannot order them to enforce federal law at the border without the authorization of the President of the United States. So we are down there to stop drug trafficking, human trafficking, gun trafficking, both going back across the border. There's interdiction both ways. But the DPS is not the Border Patrol, but we will assist the Border Patrol when asked. And when we detect and detain those that come across and are wanting to stop trafficking, we then disperse, or not disperse, but we provide disposition of those folks that have come across illegally to the Border Patrol. That's the real challenge, because in many ways that means that while that's the law and we're obligated to obey it, if the Border Patrol or INS decide that those that we have detected and detained and then provided disbursement or distribution of them to federal authorities, if the federal authorities catch and release, I mean, this came out in one of the interim hearings, it's almost as if we're participating in the trafficking. But we must obey the law. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, and I appreciate the fact that you are so focused on Border Patrol, because, you know, if we let all these people in, we won't financially be able to sustain our economy, because it costs us $100,000 to just put them in the school system.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a...
My question to you is, what about the sheriffs? What is, in Texas, do our sheriffs have the ability to detain and deport?
No, not deportation. They have the ability to detain and then transfer or provide disposition of those folks that they've detained.
Transport back to Mexico?
No, transport to federal authorities.
Which is a catch and release. So we've done absolutely nothing. We were unsuccessful in controlling our border at this
No, not at all. Remember, you've got to remember that the proper role and function of government is defined at the various levels of government. If President Obama gave us the authority to enforce immigration law, I think we could very well do it, and we would desire to do it. But us violating the law would make us no better than the president's violation of law, in whether it's the, quote, executive amnesty to tell law enforcement to disregard federal immigration law. We'd be no better. So let me get the gentleman in the back, and then I'll come to the other side. Yes, sir.
Regarding education, there's some concern about what the courts are going to be doing with the current case that's before them.
Which federal or state?
No, it is state.
Oh, you're talking about the, yes, sir.
We're revisiting again the whole school finance stuff, right?
It seems to be a recurring pattern. Yes, sir.
It's been going on now for how many years?
Well, generally it all revolves down to what's the definition of, fair.
and all that
So,
stuff,
yeah.
And the word efficient. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. Question is this, is there, what's sort of the opinion, if the courts rule in a particular way, could we wind up having a special session? Do you think we could avoid that, or do you think that might happen?
Boy, I don't know. That's really, that's a coin toss, simply because, one, waiting for the court to decide, it depends on when they're going to decide what part of the fiscal biennium are we in at the time they make that decision, what flexibility does the governor have without having to bring in the legislature. If it occurred, I mean, it's possible, but whether it's probable or not that's really too hard to tell.
Governor Evans is trying to call this.
Well, one of the things that we accomplished this go-around was to, when it comes to those kind of statewide court cases, as I'm sure many of you have noticed, the institutional bias associated with a district court in Travis County, we have tried to get away from that institutional bias and have it more of a 3-judge panel for redistricting, school lawsuits and the like. A district judge from Travis is impaneled, and then Chief Justice Hecht of the Supreme Court chooses 2 additional district judges from elsewhere in the state to get that, kind of like what happens when you go to the 5th Court of Appeals in New Orleans, or where you don't have an en banc hearing, but you have a panel of judges available to you. Then at that point, if it's appealed, it would go to the 3rd Court of Appeals, the State Court of Appeals, which Travis is a part of, but there are other counties that make up that court, so that you don't have, similar to what we had with Public Integrity Unit, where you had 253 other counties in the state that were being impacted by an official that is only accountable to one county in the state, but making state policy. And that's what was happening with school finance cases, that's what's happening in redistricting cases, things to that nature, so that we provided a better mechanism. Instead of a one-person jury, we expanded that pool to help get a better result for the entire state, as opposed to what is clearly a biased one associated with Travis County. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm from Denton County.
You got a great senator up there, Senator Nelson.
Okay, right now, a group of us at our local Tea Party are getting a little upset with the word transportation because we see it being used as a smokescreen. We were told that we wanted roads. They said, why don't you have a special tax for roads? We said, well, okay, we'll go along with that. Now we're finding that the tax that we thought was for roads is for transportation. Now, when they go with the transportation money, we now have empty trains running into Denton. We actually go watch the empty train. I sat out there one time at a bus, near a bus stop, and counted, I think it was 4 or 5 empty buses. I mean, the driver was there, okay. Empty buses. We got empty buses, empty trains, and the money that we thought went for roads got caught in the smokescreen of transportation. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to take your non-toll road I-35E and make that a toll road because we don't have enough money. And I'm saying, why don't you take the money from those empty trains? Why don't you take the money from those boondoggle transportation? Is that enough?
No, I very much, you are right. I would have to look at which fund lines in the budget go to what, sorry, I'm kind of animated. I talk with my hands.
Be
So
animated.
I'll give you a quick example. I chair nominations, and I brought in the 2 nominees that were being placed on the Transportation Commission, one of which is a former state rep out of West Texas, and one from down, I think, in the Houston area. There is a project, that the high-speed rail project, that is federally chartered with eminent domain authority, so the state has unfortunately, we have no authority in dealing with that entity. It's all federal. But I give you this example. The entity that federally chartered entity was putting the TxDOT logo on their briefing charts as they were going around selling the high-speed rail project. And so I specifically asked the TXDOT commissioners, I said, have you talked to your rail division about whether the state legislature likes the idea of doing that? You are correct that there are a number of things that we need to tighten the shot group on. I would love to get any specifics you might have so that I can address those with those commissioners. General Weber is the executive director of TXDOT. I'd be more than happy to share that with Senator Nelson or Senator Nichols. Senator Nichols used to be on the Transportation Commission. That's one of the reasons he chairs Transportation in the Senate, because he is intimately knowledgeable of how some of those things occur to make sure that we're getting a tight shot group. I cannot specifically address the exact nature of the trains and the buses in Denton County, but you are correct that the shot group for TXDOT has got to be tight instead of the, tolls. And the real challenge that has put transportation in such a conundrum as it is, and I don't mean with the shot group, but I mean the funding. Prior to Medicaid, we spent in 66, we adopted it in 65 and enacted it in the 66 fiscal year. Prior to that, we spent 30% of the state budget on transportation. As Medicaid expenses have been growing, the pie chart of the state budget, education is still nearly 55% when you take K through 12 and higher education. When you take Medicaid, which is growing at about 14% faster than any other element of the budget, Medicaid, that slice of the Medicaid pie went from 66 to now where it's doing this. And transportation's been the bill payer because of education and the other, as an example, 75% of the state budget is Medicaid and education. That leaves 25% for judiciary, DPS, TCEQ, all the other functions of state government. So it's been very difficult getting transportation shot group tight and making sure that you're not spending a ton of time on roads that are so jammed up, because with the growth of the state, we're not keeping up with that.
If I could, then I'll just
Sure,
say,
absolutely. I'm happy to.
First, I thought this was unrelated, but HB4 now has pre-K, which to me is actually government replacing parents. If this money is all in one bag, then why, I believe you also voted for HB4.
I did. HB4 is returning to the grant program that we had in the 2011 session, but it also put checks and constraints and parameters on the standards for that pre-K. Prior, we were putting money into pre-K without telling school districts, here's the standard for what those pre-K units have to do. And so in voting for it, I was voting for tough standards for a program that is already in place. It's not an expansion of pre-K. But
Well, okay, I just wanted to, thank you, I don't want
sure,
to monopolize.
no,
the
that's okay, that's
conversation,
okay. I'll take as much
because
time
other
as.
people do have questions.
Sure. Yes, sir. With the star on the hat.
I'm TJ Scott from
Hey.
Travis County.
Hey, TJ. I hope I wasn't picking on you from being from Travis
All
County.
right, I can take
You have got a tough battle down there. I appreciate you being here.
Did you file a constitutional amendment to get rid of the 25% of the gas tax that goes from our gas tax into education? If not, why not?
I did not, and generally, Senator Nichols is the greater expert on transportation-related matters and doing those, so his skill set is better qualified to do so. I don't know if he did so, but that's why I dealt with border security. There's things that each of us has our respective talents or area of knowledge, and transportation is his, so in many cases we defer to Senator Nichols. I don't know if he
My question
did SGR 5, which was part of the sales tax piece that's going to go before you.
My question is that you decided now we're going to rob from Peter to pay Paul by taking the sales tax money from cars that was going into general funds Okay, now you're gonna take partial of that, you're gonna put it into transportation, but the money that is designated for roads, gas tax, you got 25% of that coming out by the Texas Constitution.
A nickel out of every 20 cents, yeah, nickel out of every 20 cents.
I mean, does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't. The challenge is that given that education is such a large portion of our budget, the task is similar to crossing the Grand Canyon. I can see the other side, but to get there, I gotta go a mile down, I got an opposed river crossing and a mile climb up. So getting it done in one session is a very difficult challenge. It's part of the reason why the margins tax, the diversions that we began getting rid of last session, we've been shrinking the numbers, shrinking the numbers of diversions. I would give you this analogy as a military guy.
I was in it for 20 years, so.
Hua, thank you for serving. I know that Pearl Harbor was bombed yesterday and you want to be in Berlin tomorrow. But I got to get through various echelons of winning the Battle of Atlantic, staging in England, I got to have Normandy, I got to get through the hedgerow country, I got to get through the Ruhr, I got to get over the Rhine, and then I'm going to get to Berlin. So we're working on getting those directions. Is it happening all in one chunk? No, sir. But we certainly want to get there. But educate that 5 cents, it is an absolute bear. It's an absolute bear. So, yes, sir.
Well, I wanted to get back to the bill y'all passed on pre-K education. And I wanted to ask, I take it one of the higher standards is use of college graduates with education degrees, and I wonder what you think require that a person can teach a 4-year-old that requires a college degree to do.
Part of that is based upon the security and safety of the children, given some of the things that we've seen. There are a number of things that are in there. I think it was best to have a set of parameters. I cannot regurgitate and cite the entire bill for you, and each of the specific aspects of what we were doing. We put $110 million into pre-K. Previously in 2011, it used to be about a $200 million program that was grants. We actually got rid of it in 2013 because we had some full-time, we went to part-time. I don't want to try to bore you with all the machinations of full-day pre-K versus half-day pre-K. The state was providing money with no guidance. So I have to go back and dig up the bill and go through in great detail to address your specific concerns. But in going through that vote, I was voting for better accountability from our public schools and how they spend those pre-K dollars. And that's very well one of the subset of them as you're looking at. Yes, ma'am.
What about, why did you not put in that pre-K bill that those children would be taught in English, where they could have immersion into English and give them a head start on really everything? That's our big, big problem is, and those children, I know 40 years ago, I taught in an inner city school. I taught just kindergarten, and it was full-day kindergarten. Those kids, half of my class did not know a word of English, nor did their parents. Those kids were understanding in 2 months. By the end of the year, they were fluent. And I never spoke a word of Spanish to them. It works. I mean, it's been proven to work. And we're spending all this money on ESL, and those kids they will be spoken Spanish to, I bet, exclusively. Why couldn't you put some? Did y'all think about doing that?
I had many things on my mind. I read the bills, but that bill came through education. I don't sit on education, so it comes to the floor.
Education loves it because they get more money for every teacher that has completed an ESL course. it's more money for the teachers. And I mean, I'm a former teacher, but I mean,
Yeah, my parents are, and but I'll tell you what I'll do, ma'am, I'll take a look at it and see what,
we need to get this turned around. Why are those kids, those Spanish-speaking kids dropping out? Because they still haven't learned English by the